Alright, my coffee makers on the assembly line, you're about to become the hardest working hydrogen reactors in the game. Uh, Doing the S1S order here. I want you to, chemist, physicist, engineer, look at me right now. I'm not playing around. Okay. Inside here, S1S order works a little different to making collisions work. I want to start with this notation because it saves me from getting back around about being a chemist later on in clay mathematics and some other stuff about how that reverts back around to the market, defending the truth in here, because we're about to take on some particle slit experiments, specifically the marshmallow, the particle versus the gold sheet experiment. Why? Because Valentine Rabbit, you about to become it. This thing gets moving. You can't help but love those bunnies around here because you're going to need them. So inside here, we crash particles, right? We were smashing them together in CERN down the road, FMA, and it's more of your chemistry experiment where molar masses, I mean, technically it goes off in heat and steam, and that's the Schwarzschild's horizon limit around this thing being a visible black hole. Let's say it's just clear, it's dark matter, right? I'm losing some water vapor, but technically that's what happened. I weighed out the molar masses of what I got from samples, and what it tells me inside of this chart standard model is there is no uranium here. There is no signal on the system that tells me that uranium's inside here by any other visible test that I can do, physical computer that has the way it'll bend light in a certain way, and again collide that particle, shoot at it, or put it in a hydrogen reactor. Very explodey hydrogen reactor, a lot of pressure, a lot of vessels. Uranium, however, on the periodic table, let me see if we can find something else here for you. Oh, I thought I had one last night, but we have the wrath of the Lynch King here. Okay. So this is just something I was kicking around last night. When we're dealing with wave function, you get this really weird thing at like 57 and 103 on the periodic table, right? Because over here, you got hydrogen, helium, and then you could say 3, right? Because that's how that wave function kind of breaks down on its sequence before you could say, well, is it really this or this? Well, what happens first on this numerological sequence, right? You know, we're stretching what is 1 to an arbitrary distance, what could be arbitrary or infinity, by what that fractal does. So we could obviously stick that back up here and it'll work in the series of the way that wave function breaks down into higher frequencies, and how that, you know, argued inside of a unit 1 to 2, hydrogen or helium, let's say, or the element here in the glassware that we're dealing with, that in that prime function there's a measurement, and here's just regular units. We're saying that hydrogen in the proper units, that we've argued that you have to equivalently exchange hydrogen and helium and a few subatomic particles, let's call them, before it gets a little bit more complicated out here as far as dropping sodium out of solution with menthol crystals and magnesium in tea tree oil or something along those lines. And you might need a lithium jump starter to get it going a little bit, and then under temperature with ideal conditions, and you will get what is 20% reduction, what is 100% out of all reductions being 20%. So you'll get in some weird numbers like that. But, you know, doing the clay mathematics for what it does, IMA acid test, you know, you want to figure out that 6 inch by 6 inch, remove the top, do core samples, or just do in graduated cylinders 1 inch by 1 inch. Grass in there and everything, we know that the top layer is going to be at 0. So, but for fundamental science reasons, you know, when you homogenize all that 6 inch by 6 inch brick and you get it into a 5-gallon bucket, well, then different rules apply at the atomic or molecular level, or the way those charts are going to say. So what the element is there, that subatomic particle I'm hitting, is actually some kind of differential in here that changes the spin. And because inside here there's probably a drop down on the subatomic order about electrons, you can't jump orders. Okay, so when you get to hydrogen and helium, it's very tight to this core, 1, 2, 3, right? It's hydrogen has to extend the whole distance, and that is 1 distance, by what the standard represents as far as me throwing the ball and getting a result of what I'm doing over 3 hours, right? That's just first hour, second hour, third hour. And while I'm doing that, I'm also integrating what the original one was for distances on a dot plot while adding time to the equation. These functions, these systems of mods and periods of throw all the balls in here, throw all the balls, throw them back into this, collect and reset, takes a certain amount of time to do over the day. But independently, my distances over those units are according to this kind of spell. So we're not just doing them once, we're doing them many times inside of a time sequence that is 30 minutes. How many times in 30 minutes do you think you could throw that, run this, graph your scores? And then while doing that also, because you don't want to miss any events, that you're doing your run speed between these things that show that this changes over. Because here I changed central limit. Right, my original throws are going to be good like that, but as my time adjusts over, which is a different type of experiment, that I could have done that all in that field, because the force there is that you got to add wave function to this or time function to this in some manner. So back to that hydrogen and helium aspect of this, or hydrogen lithium, or hydrogen I like 57, I think is what it is. That trips over into the man-made elements where I need this vacuum or housing. I just got done with a TED Talk one about this new battery. Now, whether you're using geothermics or you're using lithium, sodium, you're taking heat, and back to the hydrogen reactor, it's still a steam engine. And those batteries, they're depleting in a system. But you would have to be able to trickle charge the fusion bomb on the size of a pellet, right? And I'm not saying that all these things are practical given, somebody's pledges or the southern border issue as far as the schisms that go on between the X's and O's and the Florida Gators and New York Giants, right? Or Buffaloes or whoever you're going to do. At the end of the day, it's a simile of war, so we don't have to do war when they beat each other, but, and they have no problem not letting it actually go to blood sports because, then they would say it's too far and clear the stands for it. So that's a bad reaction. That's a heat index inside of here that really says you gotta, there's only so much I could take without these guys putting out maps like that say, well, this is the climate, this is me agreeing what the changes are, that is hydrogen. And back to the way the hydrogen works in those fields, well, as the heat goes up, I'm going to lose ball speed throw here. If I get COVID, I'm going to lose some of those throws on this. This dot plot is starting to change mechanically where you could say that if there was a mono effect, or was it because they weren't exercising inside of here, because that's going to affect their psychological climate as far as registering this to be mathematically correct without catching all kinds of friction or drag inside of here about what negative 9.8 meters per second squared meters per second is. Well, it's 100,000 meters per second or something like that. I know the Milky Way is 100,000 light years across, damn it, and the moon is 8 seconds away, or the sun's 8 seconds away, 3 seconds away, something like that, the delay. But you're not really going to beat that equipment limit until you get more probes along the line of sight that says, now from here, superpositions, we're using the same measurement. You can see those hydrogen aspects like I can. We do, somewhere along the line, we have to have some similar experiment of walk speed, run speed, of chemistry, of physics, even if it's a gray alien up here or a dog that's sentient. However they're pawing it in 600 to the way we do, this being an original variance on this, that it gives me more of an ideal particle, a better glassware, and optics that deal with torsion through steps as this thing's before it's a bullet, after it's out of the gun. It's just dirt on the ground that's in a form that's acceptable, which may have better tendencies in that clay than what was in it. I don't necessarily need to turn it into, I'm sure it'll just tailings pond over at the gold mining camp. I know, my left-handed killer pitch. They're not saving that. I mean, they're not making clay tablets or pottery out of it in the tailings, because nobody really thinks about it in that way. Settle it, shovel it, get it out of there, throw it in a pile. And I mean, it's fine. It's just sitting there being clay in the background like that. But really, what are you doing with it? I mean, when you just have an abundancy like that, you don't have to buy it. Hell, I could make you a whole statue just out of dirt in the backyard with a shaker table like this, pulling what little bit of gold does that off of there while paying myself and trying to get somebody to pound out the tablets, right? You get the table, hell, all of them for the table of reed. Why not? Course Baker over there, he's going to come in about some gold mine that's burning tires in the mine. That's, it's not like it's a bad technique. It's just not the greatest technique, and therefore it really piles it over as far as, fixing your carbon index as well. First, you're going to do the science. You're going to figure all that out. Then you're going to Gresham's Law all that paperwork down into straight lines up and right. So, and they need to be on the semi-imperial mass equation. Let's say we hit a pocket. Do we turn it off? Do we model it? Can I take the waste on that? Do we trust the treasurer? I mean, there's a lot going on.